If you type "why is Street Fighter's Juri so popular" into a Reddit search, making doubly sure your NSFW filters are on first, of course, you'll quickly get some of the most obvious answers. She's hot, she's got a sexy attitude, and feet. In essence, she's a waifu that tons of people in the Street Fighter community find attractive to engage with either by playing as her, seeing her story unfold, or appreciating the fan art and cosplays she's so often represented through. But sex appeal clearly can't be all of it, as there have been plenty of others who have checked this box that haven't garnered the same kind of following as the sadistic spider. That's not to say Reddit is at all wrong, but we could certainly find a deeper answer that distinguishes Juri and her meteoric rise to fame from the more than 50 other characters introduced since Street Fighter II that have widely failed to rival her in these avenues. Before we focus our feng shui engine eyes in on Juri, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Juri Han was initially introduced back in 2010's Super Street Fighter IV and was an immediate standout amongst her otherwise somewhat lackluster fellow newcomers. Not only was she the most popular amongst the fresh faces, she would go on to start rivaling the likes of Street Fighter originals like Chun-Li, Ken, and Cammy, and her continued attendance and appreciation in the years beyond has slowly ebbed away at the question of whether or not she's just as beloved as they are. At this point, the only thing those other characters have on her is time, since they've had about a decade or two head start, and if Juri keeps on this trajectory for another 20 years, who knows if she doesn't start rivaling Ryu as the very face of the franchise. But that's getting a little ahead of ourselves, as we want to hone in on why Miss Han rocketed to the moon seemingly overnight. Going beyond physical appearance, Juri owes a lot of her attractiveness to her personality, and the foundation behind such a strong and interesting personality is the story that it stems from. She's actually designed to be something of an inversion of the iconic Chun-Li, sharing many similar qualities and characteristics. Both characters lost their families at young ages, prioritize kicking techniques in their approach to battle, have a trademark body part that Capcom likes to continually highlight, and are seeking to bring down M. Bison. Hell, they both even have spiked bracelets. Try not to be too subtle, Capcom. But here's a key difference. Chun-Li seeks Bison primarily out of a sense of justice, but Juri seeks him out of a sense of vengeance. Herein lies one of the unique traits that sets Juri apart from most others. She's an anti-hero. The anti-hero archetype has been around for just about as long as the hero archetype, but goes through phases of being in and out of vogue. In the first 2 decades of the 21st century, anti-heroes were red hot. This arguably started with Tony Soprano around the turn of the century and continued in television with figures like Walter White, Dexter Morgan, and Don Draper. In film, you had icons like Batman bending traditional good guy roles for the sake of overcoming a greater evil, as seen in 2008's The Dark Knight. James Bond transformed into the grittier, more morally ambiguous early Daniel Craig era, and John Wick lost his dog. Meanwhile, Geralt of Rivera, Dante, Joel Miller, Trevor Phillips, Bayonetta, and easily the most iconic of all, Kratos, were amongst the brightest beacons in the gaming space. For whatever reasons, the wider culture was really in the mood to embrace these characters who were definitely not good guys, but also weren't quite traditional bad guys, as their motivations were relatable enough and their means of taking care of business were entertainingly badass enough that it was easy to dismiss the inevitably dark ends of their journeys to enjoy the wild rides they offered in the interim. Capcom took full advantage of this momentum in their design for Juri. The character begins as a little prodigy with loving parents and a perfect life wherein she's set up to reach great heights academically as well as in martial arts.
Ain't nothing horrible gonna happen today.
Her father is a top-tier lawyer who decides to take on chaotic evil in the flesh and attempt to put pressure on M. Bison and his evil Shadaloo organization, a move that's met with violent retaliation as both of Juri's parents are murdered and she's shot in the face, specifically in the left eye, and somehow survives. This all goes down when she's about 15 years old, by the way, but unlike Chun-Li, who does seek revenge but does so only through the orderly and proper channels of law enforcement, Juri's brush with evil leaves a lasting fingerprint as she deals with her pain by becoming sadistic. After she's hurt, she subscribes to the idea that causing suffering is pleasurable, either because every act of doing so contributes to the balancing of the scale that's been heavily tipped since she was 15, or because seeing suffering in this light would give more meaning and justification to the tragedy that befell her. Either way, this makes her villainous, but perhaps not as villainous as the likes of characters such as Bison, thus giving us some interesting wiggle room to justify ourselves in aligning with one evil simply because it's an enemy of a greater evil. After training and growing for another 10 years, Juri makes a temporary alliance, all of her alliances are temporary and self-serving, with the Shadaloo Intimidation Network and is given the Feng Shui engine implant in her left eye socket. This drastically increases her speed and power, elevating her from formidable foe to downright deadly. And man, she really is powerfully intimidating. The games don't necessarily highlight this to its full degree, but in the Super Street Fighter IV Juri original video animation film that came out in 2010, we get to see Juri's potential on full display. She destroys opponents left and right in this, beating Chun-Li to within an inch of her life, taking on all the Shadaloo dolls at once, and easily defeating both Guile and Cammy. What's more, only one of these characters lands a single hit on Juri during any of these fights. The only successful attack from any of Juri's opponents is when Guile hits a series of kicks to her chest, which doesn't even knock her down and only serves to make her angry. Otherwise, Juri either dodges every maneuver with ease or simply absorbs the most powerful specials with one hand. By the time you finished watching this 30-minute film, you really feel like Juri is all but untouchable, let alone beatable. She's a dominator, and this ties back into why she's so beloved as a waifu to so many Street Fighter fans. Not only is she attractive, she can provide just fine for herself. It's not to say that the extremely hedonistic Juri would ever give much of herself to any kind of partner, but the idea of a hot waifu who could also relieve me of all responsibilities so I can just grind ranked all day goes a long way for the young man inside many of us who simply doesn't want to grow up.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf! We want it now!
Juri was based on a character who was already one of the most popular in all of fighting games, inverted to take advantage of a trend that was red hot when she was first introduced, and she's a sexy badass. And she gets the foot fetish crowd. All of this is added up to one of the most successful and beloved characters in Street Fighter canon, but will it last? The trend for hard anti-heroes does seem to be slowing in favor of softer, more emotionally in touch and vulnerable good guys.
Barbecue sauce.
And the portrayal of female sexuality in games has been waning over the years, so you could argue that some of the pillars Juri stands on may be slipping out of the social Overton window, but we honestly wouldn't be too worried about it. Juri has become such a household name in Street Fighter and boasts a perfect 3-game attendance record since her debut, joining a short list that includes only Ryu, Ken, Akuma, Chun-Li, and Ibuki. At this point, Juri may already be established as a Street Fighter mainstay with a grandfathered set of expectations from fans, where if she isn't on a roster, it might not be considered a complete Street Fighter game. But what do you think? Has Juri reached such a status, and was it because of the reasons we just went through, or is there even more to the picture? Let us know what you think in the comments below. I've been John Velociraptor Guerrero for EventHubs. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Game over.